We are very good. We have slides, yes. Let's see if I can. I would like to first start by acknowledging everyone who actively participated in our group. I hope we captured all the names, at least those who spoke up. We had a very mixed audience. We had regulators from two sides of the Atlantic. We had industry from small company, from large companies. We had academics. We had some government organizations represented and some nonprofits. And our task was to talk about innovation and regulatory harmonization potential with qualification of innovative drug development tools or novel methodologies. So I'm going to make an assumption that most people are familiar with what this is, and just go through with some themes that emerged from our discussion. So the premise of qualification, we all agreed, has to be very clearly articulated when one, meaning an organization or an individual sponsor, starts down the path of qualifying a biomarker, an animal model, an in vitro tool, whatever that tool might be. And the first step is really to clearly define the context of use. What is the purpose of that particular tool in drug development? What kind of decisions will be made from it? How will it be used? Do we understand the specificity, the sensitivity, et cetera? We spent a lot of time discussing biomarkers, mainly clinical biomarkers, and some key factors that we felt should be highlighted are that they do need careful scrutiny, that they are population specific. One needs to understand, are they predictive, are they prognostic, are they ultimately going to be a surrogate endpoint? And we also discussed how do we garner interest with those, meaning researchers, who are using sort of accepted biomarkers but are not ready to fully take them through a validation assessment or to take them onto regulatory qualification. One of the questions we discussed, is it appropriate to try and harmonize the FDA, EMA, and PMDA qualification procedures? We had someone from FDA in the room, and we had someone representing the CHMP from EMA in the room. We did not have anyone from PMDA. But we did quickly reach the conclusion that the meaning of qualification in FDA's process and an EMA scientific advice opinion in the European process are not equivalent, so that we should not try to force fit these two to harmonize at this point in time. The differences are mainly that FDA prefers some degree of predictability, that there's some assurance if a sponsor utilizes this tool in the future, it will deliver what we have indicated in the evidence that it will. EMA prefers a more principles-based approach, very much in line with Bert's comments from this morning. Therefore, the level of evidence varies because of these 2 points I just referenced. Also, the legal structure with these two agencies, their legal remit, the need for submitting fees for scientific advice or not, and then the timelines that are committed to are very different. So all of these are challenges and reasons why today we don't think trying to harmonize these really makes sense. So then we address common technical document or not. There was definitely willingness on the part of FDA and EMA to consider areas where there are more similarities in the type of information that they require, and those parts of a dossier could very likely be put into some type of a template that both agencies would consider accepting, provided there was the opportunity for some more customized components of the document. And we discussed the possibility of a sponsor being willing to conduct a pilot. And CPATH said that we would be willing to do this type of pilot where we try some form of a partial CDT going forward. Then we talked about how to prioritize across the whole world of potential new drug development tools and novel methodologies. And the first question we grappled with is priority to whom? To patients who feel that there are not appropriate treatments for their disease, to industry who has the goal of trying to have successful products on the market, to regulators who may be looking for new tools to help them in an assessment. So we don't have the answer to this, and we felt that the only way to try and go about a prioritization would be to start with a gap analysis where we hear from all stakeholders and understand what those gaps are. Then we talked about performance indicators. As regulators and consortia are spending time and energy in developing these tools and going through a qualification process, at the end of the day, is it worth it? Is it worth what we're investing? So we all felt that, yes, it is worth it, but it would be great if we could track the utility of these. And the reason to track them would be to learn from both successes and failures. We could not seem to agree on who should own the responsibility for collecting this information and reporting it, but we think it's a good idea, and that this information should also be put into the public arena. So, as I said, agreement, it's needed, but no real recommendations or even thoughts on how to move this forward. The other thing related to performance indicators, with the MAAs that are filed in Europe, there is a requirement in the dossier to discuss scientific advice, and therefore, if a biomarker were discussed during scientific advice, some information about how that was applied in the clinical development program would be part of the dossier. So that information could likely be extracted if we can find a volunteer to do it. In the US, the same requirement is not in place, so there would be no obligation for a sponsor to really describe how they might have used a biomarker somewhere in their clinical development program, particularly if it was in early development. So the only way to make this happen would really be for industry to step up and be more willing to share, are they using these tools and are they finding them helpful in decision making? Two last slides, other areas that we touched on that we felt were important to communicate back to the larger group. One is the theme of transparency. We felt that the community at large, anyone who cares about medicines, needs to better understand some of the nuances of what qualification means in the US and what it means in Europe and also in Japan. That there could be a more thorough communication when a decision is made about a new tool or a novel methodology, meaning not only describe the information that we know about that tool, but also define or describe the areas where there are unknowns and perhaps some suggestions of other types of data that could be useful. It would be ideal to be able to share lessons learned. Could FDA, for example, make public the letters of intent that they rejected? Obviously, they can't at this point in time. The sponsor would have to agree to that, but there could be some incredible learnings from that. There was also an idea put forth to consider a publication of a particular qualification from both a regulator's perspective and a sponsor's perspective. So that's something that I believe there was some energy to take forward. Then my last slide, someone offered this great idea, which was offer an incentive for researchers to go through the qualification process. And it could be something like an incentive for a priority review voucher, or it could be a commitment to a shortened time frame, or perhaps a commitment to waive a scientific advice fee if researchers would be more willing to bring their tools through the process. Again, all for the purpose of helping us learn more. And that is the last slide. That's a summary of our discussion. So are we taking questions now or at the end?
Well, you have a couple minutes left, so if there are questions of clarification, or even more generally, please line up at the microphones. We can take a couple on Martha's comments.
Okay, good, I can sit down. Thank you.
Great. Leslie, do you need a little more time? We can. Sure. Lawrence, is it all right if we start with you?